You guys can't handle this. You guys can't handle somebody who can actually be a social... You know what I am? I'm a boss. Can you handle a boss? Or do you treat yours like shit and talk shit about your boss behind their back 24/7, my friends? Holy shit. Yeah, SHIT. Have a nice day while you are full of it, but you can't hear me say the word that represents what you're full of. It's called projection. Get therapy. I've studied it. I've got it. I've got social workers and psychologists and all the... Yeah, I'm allowed to have a passionate opinion, okay? You're allowed to have a nice day. Try it, but you're not actually having a nice day, are you? Guys, this is a morning... Okay, this is what I do in private, okay? I think, wow, I really like this song. I really appreciate this person. How can I get them allocated resources? What are you doing? How many homeless people are you feeding? I can tell you their fucking names and faces. I'm feeding them. What are you doing? What the fuck are you doing today? Nothing. The same thing you've been doing for 20 fucking years. Who am I talking to? I'm talking to whoever's offended right now. Yeah, that's who I'm talking to. Guess who I'm not talking to? Everyone who realizes I can say whatever I want because it's a production. For entertainment purposes only. Get over it. Now I forget the song. Just pick a song. Listen to a song that you like. And figure out why you like that song and not another song. Get therapy. Or ruin your life and live a miserable one. Stop trying to figure out who's the bad guy, okay? I'm the bad guy for not forgiving my dad. You're the bad guy for not apologizing to somebody that you hurt. Start there. I love you to life. You love me to death. You want to fucking lock me up because you don't want to get help. Guys, I seek out therapy. I sleep well. I eat very well. I write beautiful music. I write comedy, and I have friends around the world who are celebrities. Isn't that ironic that some people are actually bad and they look good and they're free, and some people are actually good and you think they're bad because you don't get therapy? And all you need is rehab, and you deserve it in a safe, loving way. It doesn't take away your freedom, dreams. And then understand I'm sober, and you're not. You're confused. You can't speak clearly because you hate people who love you. Have you ever tried that? Have you ever thought the reason you can't speak clearly is because you don't love yourself and others? How well do you speak? Not very well. You sound stupid when you talk. I don't. I'm the woman who tries to get you to think outside the box, and you want to put me in the box with a man. Guys, stop abusing people now. Okay, this is not abuse. This is for entertainment purposes only. If you do not like it for YouTube video, you do not have to watch it. Who needs help? I don't. I need people to stop hurting people so they can stop hurting me. Guys, you thought Theory is Scary was advice to go hurt people. No, it was a juxtapositional, entertainment purposes, fucking only, paradoxical campaign of the Got Milk ad campaign. Okay? That's what the Got Milk ad campaign did to me. Okay? I don't want you guys to hurt anybody. I want everybody to get along. Can we get along? Can you be nice? Or do you want people to suffer? I don't want anyone to suffer, guys. I'm really willing to suffer for you. I'm willing to suffer for you. I'm willing to show you my no makeup so you can make fun of me, just so you might listen to me. Guys, be nice, okay? You know what's scary? You know what's scarier than dairy? The heart that you have that wants to hurt people who hurt you. Guys, hurt people. Why don't you just forgive yourself and try to love people? Sing a song. Go to work. Be nice. And if you can't be nice, say something true that matters and then say, listen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings, but I think you're important and so is everybody else.
This is a potentially depressing subject, but I'm not going to talk about it in a depressing manner. Let's talk about this with some verve and tenacity. As much as I can muster on this Friday night. Victoria, BC, Canada. I got a message from Crazy Cow Man. It's not an insult. That's the name he uses on YouTube. Crazy Cow Man. He may have some new comments below this video. And he told me very matter-of-factly that he is planning to commit suicide. And before you jump in and say, seek professional help. Isn't that just like the ethical homily of our times? Isn't that the fig leaf of postmodern morality in 2018? Oh, you have a problem? Seek professional help. Oh, you're coming to me for help? No. I'm not going to tell you to fuck off. I'm not going to tell you I'm not interested, no care. I'm going to say seek professional help. And the subtext is, whatever your problem is, I don't want it to be my problem. No, before you jump in and say seek professional help, let's just note, he already sought professional help. He already got the maximum amount of help that professionals could give him. He actually checked himself into a psychiatric hospital. He engaged in counseling, therapy, and ultimately even SSRI, antidepressant drug therapy, even though he'd seen the criticism of this, the presentation of scientific facts about this on my channel. He was aware it was very unlikely to help him, but as a last resort, he even tried that. And he reports the only effect he noticed from the use of Prozac was sexual dysfunction. Anyway, he's looking ahead to suicide in the near future. He is planning on it. And he has sought professional help. I'm going to start this video not by answering his plea for help or advice, but by addressing that homily itself, going around telling people, seek professional help. If somebody in your life comes to you wanting to talk about a personal or psychological problem, and that may seem like a silly way to put it, but let's face it, personal problems can never be disentangled from psychological problems. Like if you have a problem at work, to some extent, it's going to involve your psychological perception of the problem. It's going to involve your feelings, your thoughts and assumptions, and so on. You have a problem with your girlfriend, with your boyfriend, but with your career, with your education, with all these things. Of course, there's a psychological element. I think the worst thing you can do, friend to friend, coworker to coworker, talking to your relative, your cousin, somebody you've known for many years, the worst thing you can do is recuse yourself. The worst thing you can do is say, oh, no, I don't have a university degree in psychology. I don't have credentials in psychiatry. I'm not a licensed therapist. Therefore, you should, quote unquote, seek professional help. If you've known someone for 15 years, you have advantages in talking to them about their personal problems, their psychological problems, any of their problems. You have advantages that a therapist will never be able to catch up with in a series of 45-minute sessions. Okay? Just, your ability to hear their problem in the context of their past problems, in the context of their past life, your ability to challenge their assumptions, their memories. They may be lying to you. They may be lying to themselves. They may be so upset that they're misconstruing things in their own life while sincerely trying to be honest, trying to be honest themselves. If you've known someone for 15 years, you can say, no, wait, that didn't happen. First you guys moved to another city, then you broke up, right? Like, that didn't this happen first and that happened? If somebody says to you something in a personal conversation, somebody you've known for years, and you just stop them and say, wait, are you really telling me that's what Carol said? Like, that doesn't sound like something Carol said. Can you show me the email? And they get out their phone and show you the email. And then you look at the email and it's like, oh, you see, you misremembered this, or you read too much into this, you misinterpreted it. That kind of process is never going to happen with a therapist. And again, people may not lie down on the couch or may not lie down in the therapist's office intentionally wanting to mislead their therapist. But in large part, that is what happens. Most people are not capable of giving an objective account to a complete stranger, a professional, about what their problems are and where they come from. Or even if they could, it would be so many hours and so many months of therapy just to get a therapist to catch up to the level of knowledge of this person that a friend might have after 5 years of experience, 15 years of experience, what have you. I mean, the fundamental crisis here is that most people do not have friends they can go to with this kind of serious problem. They don't have coworkers, and they don't have somebody like a Buddhist monk who's known them for many years. Now look, Buddhist monks may be the worst people you can go to if you're contemplating suicide or dealing with personal and psychological problems. But in some traditional communities, a religious authority figure was someone who might have known you since the day you were born and may have been following the events of your life to some extent or what have you, and might be able to provide this kind of counseling, right? Now, what is the function of counseling? I think one of the greatest misconceptions here is the idea that the detachment and objectivity of the therapist is essential. And these are really terms to glorify ignorance. And their lack of involvement is a huge problem also. My father had trouble telling the truth. And, he really enjoyed lying. I would say his condition could be described as storyteller's syndrome. There's nothing he enjoyed more than sitting down with a therapist and presenting a well-balanced, symmetrical, and pleasing story. A story that had all the elements of well-structured fiction because it only had a very weak and tangential relationship to the truth. And I know for a fact, my father and I, we basically stopped talking for 10 years. During those 10 years, we had a few emails back and forth. I know that he sat down and talked to therapists or possibly psychoanalysts or psychiatrists. I don't know the particular title, but he got professional help. And he talked about his relationship with me, right? But the therapist, the professional, never talked to me, right? The therapist, the professional, never actually read the email from me, right? The therapist would only hear my father talking about his feelings about the email he received from me. And let me tell you, my father, like a lot of people, maybe he's an extreme example, maybe he has this in common with a lot of people, my father was not capable of telling the truth. Not even if he wanted to. He could not tell you the truth about something that touched his ego, not even necessarily something that made him vulnerable. He couldn't tell the truth about something that impacted his sense of grandiosity, to be honest with you. He wouldn't have been capable of telling the truth if he wanted to, and he may not have wanted to. That may not be what he enjoyed. And then from the therapist's perspective, what is this process? Very, very briefly, you have to remember that therapists have their own biases built into these scenarios. Therapists don't particularly want to hear an honest but broken and incoherent narrative. They don't really want to hear you break down or watch you break down. They'd be much more pleased to have a seemingly, erudite, well-spoken, and charismatic person present them with this well-fashioned story, which is exactly what my father could do. But what the therapist couldn't do was interrogate him in return. The therapist could not or would not. Maybe this will change in the future. Maybe in the future, therapists will employ private investigators, will employ detectives to go and check if their clients are telling them the truth or not. Because there are outrageous lies that people tell. Again, sometimes with the best of intentions, sometimes it's because they're lying to themselves, and sometimes the intentions are darker than that. Sometimes people want to fundamentally indulge their own sense of grandiosity. They may go to a therapist just wanting to have their notions reinforced. But the fundamental service you can provide with no diploma in psychoanalysis or psychiatry or no license as a licensed therapist, the fundamental service you can provide is whatever depth of knowledge you have of this person. You know them for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. You can challenge what they think they know. You can challenge, they'll tell you what they feel. You can challenge, why do you feel this way? And you can explore with them how they built up these assumptions. In the particular case, maybe how they built up these resentments or these feelings of anger or this sense of disappointment. Whether it's something professional or romantic, whatever the personal problem is, if I've known you long enough that I know what your assumptions were when you started the job, and then your sense of disappointment now, I can say to you, well, yeah, you say that now, but at the time, this is what you told me. That's invaluable. And a therapist can't do that. A psychiatrist or a psychologist can't do that. And a psychiatrist or psychologist also is not even just going to open up your Facebook or go back to that email you sent and say, well, wait, you know what? That was back in 2014 you said that. No. That's, you've got it mixed up. And again, they may not be mixing it up intentionally, but people do when they feel strongly. So guys, what professionals can offer above all else in 2018, professionals can offer are prescription drugs. And as we've explored recently on the channel, the value of those prescription drugs is shockingly low. Now, professionals can also offer, what's referred to as mirroring in therapy. They can offer to sit there with you and sympathize with you and empathize with you and listen to you. They can offer a certain kind of detached perspective. But what's going to be utterly lacking are exactly all the things that an old friend can bring to the table. So if you are someone's old friend, do not fall into this trap. Do not repeat this excuse, this homily, what I think is ultimately an evil cop-out, presented as a compassionate gesture. Do not tell people to seek professional help. You're saying two things. One, you're basically saying that this person is crazy, that their condition is so bad they need a higher level of psychiatric care, that they need to see a professional, that they need to be institutionalized, this needs to be treated as a medical problem, right? And you're also really saying your problem is not my problem. I'm not going to listen, and I'm not going to get involved. And probably what they need is not just someone to listen and someone to get involved, but someone to challenge them, someone to really give them a new perspective on problems that obviously they're already familiar with, from their own perspective. And yeah, maybe the best therapists can do that. Maybe the best counselors can do that. But I don't know. I'm not a great optimist. I think that is actually very, very rare that you get that out of counseling and therapy sessions. On the contrary, most of your time and energy, if you go to see a counselor or therapist, psychoanalyst or psychologist or something, just goes into trying to give them the backstory that a personal friend would already have from years of knowing. Not even a close friend, maybe a coworker. I mean, I remember going to see a counselor or therapist of some kind with my ex-wife before we split up, before we got divorced. And do you know how many hours it would take just to get someone in that position when you seek professional help, just to explain to them, oh, yeah, I was living in Cambodia. This was the kind of research I was doing in Cambodia. And the guy was interested. He was fascinated. For him, this was great. He was, this was so much better than just talking to alcoholics about how hard it is to quit alcohol, or talking to victims of childhood sexual abuse about how, devastated they are by their sexual trauma. For him, this was wonderful. I was his favorite client. I could sit there and in a well-educated, erudite way, use up the hours and talk about, philosophy and history and politics and what I was studying and what research I was doing for a living. Did it help our problems in the marriage? Absolutely not. There was zero positive outcome for us. And I mean, unless you're someone who's in such a strange state of denial that it's liberating for you to describe to a detached outsider what your problems are, certain type of characters like that. I think stereotypically, especially, a century or two ago, someone who maybe grew up in the Christian religion, it might be liberating for them to basically have this form of confessional communication outside of the church, and then just to hear what they're saying out of their own mouth when they describe their problems, because they keep that bottled up and say, oh, wow, now I have a new perspective on it just for that reason. But most of us, especially in 2018, that's not the case. So there's the lure of prescription drugs solving your problem. There's the lure of a diagnosis, that there may be a fancy Latin term in a book that's going to categorize and label exactly what your problem is. But behind the mahogany door of professional help, the seemingly impressive edifice of modern medical science as applied to our personal and psychological problems, there is not a lot there. And, at age 39, I feel confident saying those professionals have very, very little to offer you, not even in contrast to a close friend, an estranged friend, an ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend, or even like a work colleague who's known you for many years. There would be advantages in talking to any of those types of people over seeking professional help. So when you're in that position, when you're the friend someone is talking to, maybe even if you're the ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend, which can be very uncomfortable, I'd urge you not to retreat behind this well-worn homily of seek professional help. Now look, the problem with the situation is, I think I've already foreshadowed my answer on why it's going to be so brief. I don't know this guy. I mean, obviously, he sought professional help. He has exhausted what professional help can do for him. He has told me nothing about what his problem is, what's brought him to this point, why he's so certain that he's going to commit suicide. So I'm going to answer in the most general terms possible, partly because there's another YouTuber who I'm not going to name. I'm going to call him Dave. Dave is not his real name. There was another YouTuber who was talking about suicide and talking about his problems. And I wrote to him privately in response to that with the following set of reflections. Many, many, many people in our 21st century, English-speaking, industrialized, Western culture, many people are what I would call objective-oriented people. They're motivated in relation to specific objectives. Like they have an objective, they want to go to medical school and become a medical doctor, etc. That this is an objective, and their desire for that objective resembles the desire to live. But it is not, in fact, the desire to live. And it's actually quite dangerous to confuse the two. Many people, I think, especially stereotypically heterosexual men, set out at any given time a number of these objectives, and the pursuit of those objectives becomes a substitute for the actual enjoyment of life, or actually wanting to be alive, or even actually thinking about or philosophizing about life. And this has advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, this provides with a certain kind of focus, direction, etc. But because of this cultural background, I think most people are going to look at someone who's stereotypically suicidal, now dealing with two examples, Crazy Cowman and Dave. They're going to look at someone like that and say, well, what you need is to be passionately motivated in the pursuit of some objective. Now, this gets into the type of problem I discuss on my channel all the time. Perceiving weakness as strength. Wanting something, wanting it, is not a strength. It's a weakness. And it doesn't just create emotional vulnerability. It is an emotional vulnerability. So, you want to be a medical doctor, and you want it, and you want it, and you want it. And, if you then flunk out of medical school, you can't get your prerequisites, you can't get the medical degree. This can be a tragedy that reshapes your entire life. You're suddenly cut off from that sense of, desire, direction, motivation, etc. But moreover, most people's desires are not that wholesome and not that finite. So the YouTuber I was talking to, he was talking about being fueled by the desire to be wealthy. He specifically said to be a millionaire. The desire to have fame. And he didn't say it explicitly, but I think very much implicitly. He was talking about the desire to be adored by women, etc. And he's trying to draw strength from that. He's trying to feel stoked up and motivated. And there's a sense of being powerful from wanting something so much and even visualizing it and, fanning the flames of this desire, of building up your sense of desire in your mind. And he thinks of this as a positive motivation that overcomes suicidal thoughts or suicidal tendencies, right? And here's the problem. Wanting is not having. Wanting, I understand the sense where empirically it may feel like strength, but this actually is weakness. It's not just that this creates sorrow or leads to sorrow. This actually is a form of sorrow that you're misperceiving as pleasure because you're fantasizing about it. And because also, in the same way that extreme hunger can make you feel strong, the desperation to eat when you've really gone hungry for too long, that very desperation, again, it creates the illusion of strength. You feel like you're moving faster, you're thinking faster, you're struggling to get food. Whether it's that you're fasting or for some reason you're experiencing starvation-like conditions, you may perceive that as strength. In fact, it is weakness. Right? Now, the actual solution to this problem, the specific problem I'm talking about here, is not to think in terms of wanting things. I mean, not to, in this guy's case, he was overcoming his suicidal thoughts or his despondent, sorrowful thoughts by trying to visualize how much he wants to be a millionaire or how much he wants to achieve fame and these things. Someone else's case, maybe how much they want to become a medical doctor, go to med school or something like this. And then visualizing and thinking about it and building up this feeling of wanting. Really, what I'd claim here is that what you're building up is sorrow, and what you're creating is emotional bitterness, not emotional strength. There is a different approach to this, which is to instead try to cultivate detachment. And detachment is, I think, one of the underrated virtues in modern Western culture. Believe me, it's also underrated within modern Asian Buddhism. You can have detachment about things you want and what they mean. With that, you can regard these things in a... Now, I had a specific illustration of this, the difference between wanting something powerfully and being detached in your pursuit of it, which was, relationships between heterosexual men and women, men pursuing women, romantically. I think, again, maybe the majority of men, when they're young and inexperienced, they think that the way to do this is to build up their passion, is to want something so much, to be overcome with emotion and desire. And then at some point, they have to mature and know the way to talk to women, the way to approach women, the way to even evaluate women. If women are approaching you, women are the way to evaluate the offer or think about starting the relationship, running the relationship, is from a position of detachment. And so if you just think about this, detachment isn't indifference. Detachment isn't not caring. But it is certainly a situation where you are thinking rationally and you have some kind of separation between that rational process and your emotional process so that you're able to evaluate the things themselves and you're able to evaluate your own emotions, your feelings about them, and you're able to evaluate even your own process of evaluation. This is the situation we want to be in, whether you're trying to start a new romantic relationship or whether you're thinking your way out of, maybe a career dead end, like you wanted to be a medical doctor and you can't be, or you're thinking your way out of whatever the impasse is in life that leads you to be suicidal. So this was an interesting train of thought, advice that came up when I was looking at another YouTuber who'd been suicidal lately, who I'm referring to here as David. The problem is here with Crazy Cowman. I suspect that he may be in the opposite situation, that his problem isn't that he's burning with these desires, with motivation, with wanting, and so on, but that he feels no desire at all. The problem is simply because I get no description of what this is, why it is that he simply wants to die, which is simply that he has no desire. It's not, he doesn't want to become a medical doctor, he doesn't want to achieve fame and fortune or any of these other kind of shallow things. He doesn't want to achieve anything intellectually or what have you. And, look, ultimately, if you make this decision, I respect your right to choose to die. However, with all these caveats I've misstated, I don't know you, I've never talked to you, I don't know you as well as a friend who's known you for 5 years, and I recognize you've already sought professional help and you've exhausted what counseling can do for you. I really would recommend that you try to engage in one of the most basic instincts we have from birth, and that is curiosity. If you can try to kindle your sense of curiosity for almost anything, if you can try experimentally to challenge your own ignorance about things, whether those are tidbits from history you never understood, whether that's, so there's an example that's become an internet meme, how do magnets work? If you can go around, if you can keep a notepad, if you can start noticing things and start investigating things and start challenging yourself and trying to cultivate curiosity itself, I think that curiosity is the kindling out of which, that kind of objective-oriented motivation sparks, right? Why live? I mean, ultimately, why live? I don't think that we live for the satisfaction of our desires, for the pursuit of our desires. I don't think we even live for the pursuit of happiness, to use a well-worn phrase. The meaning of life, or the process of finding meaning in life, ultimately, at its most basic rudiments, must begin with curiosity. So the encouragement I can give you is to try to exercise that most childlike and most infantile and most pure part of your mind, the part of the human experience where for the first time you looked at letters on a chalkboard and didn't know what they were, or it probably wasn't on a chalkboard, you probably saw a sign through a window and you wondered what things were and wondered how they worked. And I mean this sincerely, it could be anything. It could be plumbing that you never thought about before, how to fix a tap, anything, whether you do it with your hands more than with your brain. If you can encourage yourself, whether in the most childlike way or in the most scientifically pretentious way possible, to try to exercise your sense of curiosity, I think that will not put you back in touch with your humanity. It will not put you in touch with any kind of profound mystery about the beauty of human life. It will start to put you back in touch with the material reality of what this world is and of what your relationship to it is, which is ultimately the relationship of an infinitely ignorant investigator. And that is what makes day-to-day life so dynamic and so rewarding, and what makes us want to keep living as we get older and older, is not the pursuit of one desire after another, not one fantasy after another, building up our sense of desire, not disappointment and disillusionment and overcoming those things, and in my opinion, not social status or a sense of wanting revenge against others or trying to prove others wrong or something like this. If you can get back to that, working up from the bare rudiment of curiosity, that instinct that so rarely is even given a name, I think that's a first step that I can recommend wholeheartedly without even knowing what the second step might be for you. Live or die. For you, the question of whether or not you can find a meaningful life, a meaningful way to live, or a new attitude towards living that makes your experience of life meaningful. For you, right now, it's a life and death struggle. So, literally and figuratively, back to the chalkboard.